Today I wanted to share with you a meal. We had a lot growing up, salmon and biscuits. And if you're from the South, you may have enjoyed this meal like we did. So we're going to start off by making our biscuits. I have already preheated the oven to 450 degrees. And we're going to start by souring some milk. Now when I was growing up, my mom always had buttermilk on hand, but I don't have any. So we're going to use about a cup and a half of whole milk, and I'm gonna just throw in some lemon juice. This is not something that I measure, and I'm gonna let it sit for a few minutes to sour or curdle, and it'll become a little bit thick. So if you've watched my video on freezer biscuits, you can make those instead of this recipe if you prefer. But growing up, this is how my mom would make biscuits, is with buttermilk, flour, and lard. And it's really cheaper than the other recipe. However, the other recipe freezes better and tastes better once it's frozen. So it just depends on what your preference is. I'm going to start by adding 2 cups of self-rising flour into my bowl. I'm going to go ahead and sift it to make sure that I don't have any little bitty dried pieces of flour. And this is White Lily self-rising flour, but you can use whatever brand you prefer. Now we're going to add our lard in. We're going to use about a 1/4 cup. I really don't measure it. I look at it. If it's the size of an egg, then we go with it. We're going to use this blending fork and blend it up, but you can use your hands to do it if you don't have one of these. So go ahead and blend it up, and then we'll add our buttermilk. Remember, this is home cooking, so nothing has to be perfect. It will all work out in the end. We're going to add our sour milk to this, and we're going to stir it up until the dry flour disappears. I don't want to add too much, but I don't want to add too little and then have a really dry biscuit dough. So I'm going to start by adding the sour milk a little at a time. now we're going to dust the surface and go ahead and roll out our dough. Of course, you can just roll them in your hand if you prefer. That's how my mama does it. But I'm going to go ahead and cut these out. But first, I'm going to bring the dough together, and then I'm going to do like I always do with biscuits. I'm going to pat it out, fold it like a piece of paper, and then flatten it out again, fold it like a piece of paper. And this is just to create some layers in the biscuit, which I really do like. So in the title of the video, it says that this is a meal that we had growing up poor, and it is. But the truth is, we didn't know that we were poor. I mean, my parents knew that we didn't have a lot of money, but me and my brother never knew that we were poor. We always had plenty to eat. My mom and dad grew large gardens, and we had vegetables, and mama always cooks some beans and cornbread and potatoes and all the vegetables, the country vegetables that you can imagine. And to this day, that has to be my favorite meal to eat. I mean, over any kind of Spanish food, Chinese food, homegrown vegetables cooked like my mama did is still my favorite. Now I'm going to cook these biscuits in a cast iron skillet, and they're going to be in there for about 15 or 20 minutes, just until they're golden brown. And then when I pull them out, I like to spread a little bit of butter over the top. So growing up, I don't remember eating a whole lot of meat. I think probably because meat was expensive. I do remember her buying ground beef and chicken with the bone in, and of course we always had salmon, but it was the salmon in the can, none of the fresh stuff, and it always had to be the double Q salmon for my dad. And we still don't really love meat that much. Me, my mom, or dad, you know, we still prefer vegetables over meat. So now we're going to make the salmon patties. I'm going to start by getting some lard in a cast iron skillet and letting it heat up. And you can use any oil you prefer. And we're going to grab a can of pink salmon. And I'm going to take some of the skin and the bones out of it. Some people don't do that. You don't have to do that, but that's how my mama did. So I'm going to do it that way. And then I'm going to add 2 eggs into it and season it with some salt and pepper. And then we're going to add a little bit of lemon juice and maybe 3 tablespoons or so of flour and then cornmeal. Now I'm just going to grab some of the mixture and flatten it out and put it in this pan, and it's nice and hot. It's really a little too hot, but we're going to let them crisp on one side and then turn it over and crisp on the other side. Now today we're going to be making some gravy to go along with it. And Mama never served gravy with salmon and biscuits, but my son loves gravy. Anytime we have biscuits, he thinks he needs gravy, and Mama made gravy a lot. And gravy can seem intimidating to some people, but it's really not hard to do, and it's really inexpensive. Now you can also add onion into the patty mix, but you know my children do not like onions inside of things. But if it was up to me, I probably would have grated some in there, but I decided since I want them to eat that I would leave them out. So now I'm going to start on the gravy, and I'm going to take some of my bacon drippings and put them in the cast iron skillet and let it start melting. You can also use butter, or you know, if you're cooking sausage gravy, you would just use the grease from the sausage. But we're going to let this melt, and then when we're making gravy, we kind of want equal parts flour to oil. So I'm going to keep adding the flour a little bit at a time until I get a consistency that I want. I don't want it too thin, but I don't want it like a paste either. Now if you mess up and you have it where it will not thicken, you can always create like a cornstarch slurry with some cold water and a tablespoon or so of cornstarch, and then add that in, and it'll thicken it up just in case you can't get it to thicken. So now I'm going to let this cook just a little bit, and then I'm going to add in some milk, about a cup to a cup and a half. I really don't measure it. It just depends on how much gravy you want to make. And then I add in a little bit of water to thin it out. And we're going to let this cook until it's bubbly, and then we'll season it to taste. And that's all there is to making gravy. It's super easy. And that's what we're having for dinner tonight, everyone. If you like the videos like this, please subscribe to the channel and leave us a comment down below. We would love to hear from you.